Hola! Welcome to the Two Amigas in Hollywood podcast. We are Lina Sanchez and Maria Angela Quiroga, and we live in Hollywood. Yes, in Hollywood.
We are entertainment professionals in love with this industry, and we want to share our experience and knowledge
And that of our guests.
Wow.
to help you navigate the Hollywood labyrinth.
Hola! Welcome to the Two Amigas in Hollywood podcast. Welcome to today's episode. We are very excited because we have an amazing guest.
Yes, so we have Tahira Foy. She's a colorist and finishing editor with over 8 years of professional post-production experience. She has served as a post-production coordinator and post-production supervisor on several television series, TV specials, and network short-form promotional material. She received her undergraduate degree in economics and film and media culture from Middlebury College. She also has an MFA in media arts with concentration in post-production from Emerson College. Tahira is also co-chair of the YEA program from the Hollywood Professional Association, and most recently she served as a colorist on the season 1 of the BET Plus series Average Joe, and she is one of the colorists that remastered HBO's hit series Sex and the City. She also enjoys being in the front lines of industry innovation and approaches each project with experience, expertise, openness, and a very collaborative spirit. So we want to welcome Tahira. How are you?
Woo,
Hi. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. If you can't tell by the smile, just on my face. But thank you so much, Lena, Maria. I'm happy and excited to be here.
Yeah, again, thank you so much for being here. And so, can you tell us exactly where are you from?
Yeah, so I am from Maryland, Columbia, Maryland to be specific. It's kind of between Baltimore and DC, north of DC, south of Baltimore. But yeah, that's where I grew up, mainly in that general area, the DC, Maryland, Virginia area.
Amazing. And then when was the time that you realized you wanted to move to LA? And why did you wanted to move to LA?
Oh wow. I think that took a while. Because I think the kind of catalyst for me moving to LA was kind of knowing that I wanted to be working in the industry. And I didn't come to that realization until I was in grad school. So yeah, it was probably like 2011, 2012, 2013, like that kind of time was like, oh, I think maybe LA is where I need to go next because I definitely want to be involved in the industry.
Definitely.
That's really nice. So you kind of like tell us a little bit about that, but how was the moment in your life that made you want to work or be in the film industry and especially in post-production?
So I think it was like a series of steps because I didn't really think of, like, we all consume media, movies, television from like a young age, but it didn't really click that people worked in the industry outside of like acting or directing until I was like in college. In undergrad, I started studying film criticism and started studying directors and kind of was like, oh, there's a lot that goes into TV and movie, and they have such a cultural impact. Um, and then I would say in grad school was kind of when I started to understand basically what all the credits meant. Um, and then I always joke with entertainment is like you kind of have to choose your chaos.
Yes,
Totally.
And
100%.
yeah, when I was at Emerson, we were exposed to a lot, like the production side, the writing side, even teaching, and post production was what really stuck with me. And then I worked in like the film lab at Emerson, and we got to like see Avids. They had Pro Tools, and they had like a room with Resolve, and I was like, oh, this is cool. Like I like this, and I just kind of thought if I was going to be in the industry, I don't think I was 100% settled on color, but I think I was definitely at that point settled on I want to work in post production.
Nice.
Nice.
Yeah, so tell everybody what does specifically a colorist do? I think it's kind of self-explanatory, but tell us more about it because, again, as you said, a lot of us think that post-production is just like editing, and it's not. There's so many people involved in post. So yeah, we want to open that conversation and tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, no, for me, I feel like color is a part of the visual language of a work. And so colors as a colorist, we often work with the post producer, as well as the director of photography, the DP. And we're kind of you wear two hats, like a technical hat, understanding what the camera can capture and how that can be remapped to what we view the footage on, what whether it's in a theater or on a TV at home, an OLED versus a regular LCD, or back in the day 4:3 square TVs versus 16:9. So we're on that side, and then we're also on the side of creating the visual mood and language of a show. I would say it's very similar to, like, for me, like in music, when you choose the tempo of a song, right? Because it kind of determines it adds to how people interact with the song and in what spaces, like happy, sad, things like that. And I would feel like with in color, kind of choosing the palette is a similar journey. I love it.
Yeah, definitely. When I was in photo school, and we got taught all about like the complementary colors
Yeah.
and like the oh my god, the psychology of
Yeah.
colors. It's really important, and people like, I feel like a really good movie and a very well crafted film, it's like you are not really thinking actively about this technical stuff while you're watching, but they make you feel a lot, like everything, of course, the story, the color, the music, everything together. Like if you take one out, it just doesn't work. It's such a
Yeah.
collaborative process that it's super important, and colorists, I think, are very important, and
Mhm.
I think people don't really recognize it as much as we should.
Oh, I thank you. Yeah, I think that's so true. Everything has this unique kind of perspective and aspect to it, but like you're saying, by itself it doesn't work, but when you put it all together it does. And then if one of those pieces aren't there, it also is off. So it's just really interesting. And like, yeah, we like colors in some way an extension of painting, and like you're talking about palettes or complementary colors or even limited palettes, right? Where painters only had a certain amount of primary colors that they had to mix everything with. Like, we're still pulling from all of those things as well. We're pulling from elements of photography. So yeah, it's fun. And we're all behind, it, like you said, we're the invisible arts. I would say that a lot of acting, of directing, even of editing. When people are in the world and they don't realize, kind of circling back to what I was saying, when I was younger, I didn't realize that all these people were working behind the scenes. It was because it was seamless and I was being immersed in story. So yeah.
Yeah, I always also think about Breaking Bad and how important the color in Breaking Bad was. Could you imagine Breaking Bad now being the color that
Mhm.
they treated, and that was like, and Breaking Bad, I think, is how the way it is so famous and so important in the film industry and TV industry is because
Yeah.
of these color treatments that they decided to do in
Yeah.
this TV
Or you
series.
think about certain, like, directors. I think of like like a Wes Anderson and his most recent
Totally, I
Asteroid
was
City. It's
thinking.
like, could you imagine that film without that palette? It's like, does it work the same? Does it feel the same? Yeah. So I totally agree.
Yeah, another one that really pops into mind is the Joker with
Mm-hmm. With Joaquin Phoenix?
yeah,
How
with
can
Joaquin
yeah.
Phoenix. It's like it's kind of green, dark,
Mhm.
all the movie,
Mm-hmm.
like
Yeah.
cyan, but
Mhm.
it really creates the purpose of the movie, and like comparing it, um maybe I'm gonna say a controversial thing, but I didn't like as much the Robert Pattinson Batman, but
Oh, the
that
darker,
movie,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, but that movie was like all around very orange and dark.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what I remember. So that's also how you kind of tap into the colors as well.
Yeah. And what's exciting about being in color is like we're at the stage before that final decision has been made. So we're looking at the footage and we see it like you could take any movie, like even I don't know Barbie, right? And in color we're at play, right? So we could put the 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 Robert Patterson Batman look on the Barbie footage. It's like, oh, okay, are we enhancing? Are
That's
we in line with
Barbenheimer.
all of the other creative elements, or are we doing something out of left field? But that's the fun part because when we get the footage, it's still
Raw.
we're still in that phase, yeah,
Yeah,
of like, okay,
definitely.
well, what's the look? And so it's so cool when you work on projects and you know what could have been and what is, and it's not really a like right or wrong because it's all very taste driven, but the idea that like, oh my gosh, well, we had room to do this and this and this and this, or like, I'm glad we settled on this because this, it, like you said, it's I always do music analogies, but food too. It's like eh, ingredients, instruments, you all have to work together. So like you, I guess my food analogy is you can't come in as a colorist and like say, okay, I want to go extreme, and it's like putting like, you're only supposed to have a pinch of salt, but because you came in, you decided you wanted to put a cup of salt in, and now the dish doesn't really shine the way that it needs to shine because uh you're not complementing all of the other things that are involved.
That's so interesting. So you started as a post coordinator, and so how did you make the transition to being a colorist?
Oh man, it was a journey. I think I was always interested in color. I started as a coordinator in short form promo. It was a facility that did short form promo, but then also did like EPK. So like that's like the stuff when, ooh, dating myself. When we had these things called DVDs.
Oh my.
And you have the DVD like special part where they like interview the actors about like, oh, it was so fun on set doing this stuff. So like the facility I work with, we filmed a lot of that stuff too. It was a smaller facility, which was cool. So I was coordinating, but I was able to like have my hand in a lot of different things. Like I was able to be in like a color bay or mix room like all the time. I had access to all of these things. And I knew Avid by then. I knew a little bit of Resolve by then. So it was really kind of, I understood that this was a step. I hadn't really decided that color was my thing, but I knew that coordinating and then supervising at the facility was putting me in the right position. I was understanding, I always say like coordinating, supervising is like understanding the rules of the road, especially in post. Which is really important because you kind of understand and appreciate everyone's role. And then yeah, I went show side coordinating um, on Fear the Walking Dead. And then I got a good relationship with the online facility while I was on that show. And so after my season there, I worked with the online facility and I was doing dailies, online editing, and then color assisting. Um, and then I got an opportunity to come back to short form promo, but to do color. And so that's how I got into color. And so I was doing short form promos, but also like early, like when shows were getting pitched at like MIPCOM and things like that, trying to get picked up by studios, just doing color on their uncolored footage of sizzles and things like that, and internal sizzles for networks and stuff like that. So that's how I got into color. And then yeah, from there it was HBO and restoration, and now I'm doing like current shows. So yeah, it's been a zigzaggy kind of road, but it's all been rooted in post.
I love that. And how did you feel was your experience at HBO? Like how what do you think about like being part of such a big and renowned studio and kind of moving now to Arsenal?
It was phenomenal. Like just going in, like kind of taking you take a beat because you're like surrounded by people that have worked on all these shows that have been kind of in the culture, and like they're casually telling stories, and I'm just like, oh, wait a minute. Like you're telling a story about like The Wire or Sex in the City. It's like, so that was phenomenal. um at HBO, the other great thing was I just work with such a great team, and then to work on such a large project kind of really allowed me to kind of, I guess, allow the muscles that I had developed to shine, but also it was a great place for them to stretch and grow, and work at scale. So yeah, it was such a good experience. And then I feel like every show, big, small, short form, long form, um each time you have to interact with someone new, a new DP, a new producer, it's training, because I feel like, for me, I mean, I'm still relatively new, but I feel like no matter how much preparation you have or experience you have, every project is new. And so that skills of just being able to approach a project in a new way, where it's like I'm bringing expertise, but I'm also just excited to collaborate. And I think that's really a great thing as an artist, too. So yeah, you kind of have skill sets that you gain from experience from working from big places, small places, but then it's just like, oh, this person works like this is cool, or this person works like that, or whoa, I would have never thought to do something like this. Let me try it. So yeah.
Yeah, it's
So,
all. Oh my God,
no.
sorry. Yeah, it's just commenting on that. I feel kind of the same. I work as a commercial photography. Yeah, commercial photographer, as a freelancer, and it's kind of the same. I never feel bored because every single project is different. Yes, you use fairly the same tools, lighting, color, blah, 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 all of this. But talent is usually new. Crew, we try to stick together if we like how we work together. But not everyone is available all the time. And, you have to like shift gears. But also, like, the creative for each brand and for each project is different. And I think that's super exciting. And it's one of the best things that I think we love about the industry, is that even though we have been doing this for a while, it's super exciting and new, and yeah, you're never bored.
I think it's also important to mention that is a industry that you need to adapt really quickly to all the moving parts of everything that's going on in the productions. I'm also, because I work as a producer for a long time and then moving to post production, I felt it was kind of like the same thing, but just like moving assets in a different way. But it's just adapting to new people, new experiences, new forms of working to other people, collaborating with other people. So that's what happens every time that you change a company, a project, anything. You need to be really open to adapt to any situation.
I completely agree. Going back to my food analogy, but it's like because I will, and thinking about Maria and like being in color, oftentimes people will reference photos. So I have tons of like photo books, because it's like, oh, if we can create a mood like this, or or people will reference uh paintings, or like oil art painting, like people that work in other mediums, or even music, like just like, can we get something that creates the same feeling as this kind of sound does? And I'm like, it's kind of like, and like both of you guys are saying, you get to these new places and you're like, oh my gosh, but I'm still using these skills that I have. And it's like pizza, or like a staple, right? Like, we all know what pizza is, but like when you go to a new restaurant, it tastes different because it's got a foundational part to it, but then there's different creative elements that are added. And so yeah, I'm always like, as long as you can understand the fundamentals, especially in like art, like color, photography, things are so subjective, right? And you need to be able to change. And you might not really understand why you're moving in this direction or that direction. Um, but it's just really important to understand like what the base is. And so then it doesn't matter if the software changes or, if Apple comes out with a new computer, where you don't use your hands anymore. Like I don't know. I'm just like, what will they think of next?
You're giving them ideas.
But yeah, those things can change, or even like if, as of recent, like display technology has changed, right? That's a really good like basis point. But the fundamentals of creating the visuals hasn't. We've just adapted, like you said, to the new display technology. So yeah, I feel like for people starting out, I I always encourage people not to jump to the gear or the latest thing that's tied to something that's a little bit more transitory, but really root yourself in the things that have stood the test of time, like color. People were painting with all kinds of mediums for thousands of years. Like painting and drawing is not new. How we're experiencing it is.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I love that you said that you guys reference photos because as photographers, we reference film stills and we're like, oh
It's
my
a
God, we
loop.
want to
It's
create
a
this
loop.
kind of feel. It's a loop. And definitely, like, even for example, animation is a great example of like how from a drawing, of course, now it's a lot of CGI, but um, when it started is just based on drawings and how you create movement based on multiple drawings.
Yeah, and then people that were doing like cell animation and stuff, I feel like they were studying dance. Like there it's like and that's like sculptures too, just studying how the human body moves, right? So that we can adapt it to this new medium of moving animation or moving picture. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, we mentioned something about adapting to everything that's, coming next in our careers. And that could be projects, people, new bosses, new coworkers. And sometimes while we adapt to all these things, we also experience rejection. So, can you tell us if you have any experience, any kind of experience of rejection? And if you do, how do you overcome it?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like rejection happen, for everyone. It happens at every stage. We always get no's. But I feel like for me, and this comes, some of it just comes with time. Like you've experienced enough rejection and overcome enough rejection to know that a no is not the end of the world because you've had a no before and you've made it beyond that. So some of it does come with time. Also realizing what your skill sets are, trying to find your passion and understanding that that's not tied to employment. So, like when
Mm-hmm.
COVID happened and a lot of things were on pause, I feel like for a lot of creatives or just some people realized that their passions and their sparks weren't, right? Like, oh, I can't go outside or I can't go into the office, but I still have an urge to make something. So I'm going to start baking bread or I'm going to start painting. And it's that for me, that core is what keeps you going. It's not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily like, or at least for me, I've learned it's not a title or thing like that. It's just that I can't stop doing these things. I can't stop looking at images. I can't stop trying to deconstruct color, playing with palettes and things like that. And so I feel like when you ground yourself, no matter what your career is, when you ground yourself in that thing that sparks and you understand that it's not tied to employment, yes, employment is important. We all need sustenance. But just know that that is innate of you so that when you get a no from uh the kind of career side of things, know that that no is just rooted in career. It is not rooted in you as a creative person.
I I have to say, like, I feel really connected with everything you mentioned, because I think I never thought about it until this moment. But when I got to the US in 2017 and I basically started everything from scratch, I was getting a lot of rejection, and I was getting like super frustrated. And I thought, my life kind of like was over because I was not gonna get any job or any opportunities here. But sometimes I felt that, but then at the same time, I was feeling like, you know what? Whatever it happens, I want to do this. You know, whatever whatever it happens, I really love to be in the film industry, and this has been my dream to live here and to work in the entertainment industry here. So, I think I just need to have patience.
Yeah. And you want to find the right fit because all yeses aren't necessarily aligned with what you really need to be doing. So like just as much as we might fear rejection, there should be some, I guess, caution about a non-rejection that doesn't necessarily align with your true spark, because then you could find yourself working and it's not fulfilling, and so it becomes a struggle and you have a lot of the same frustrations that you would experience when you receive a rejection. So
Exactly. And
Definitely.
so what has been the most difficult thing about, navigating the industry for you?
I would say one of the most difficult things is that I didn't grow up in LA, and a lot of the industry mechanisms and how the industry works were very new to me. So I found myself learning about the industry while trying to work in the industry. And I could see some of my peers had already known a lot of the things that I was learning kind of on the fly. And so I don't know, it gave them more space maybe to or I don't know if it's space, but like you just find yourself exerting a lot of energy, not only with career, but just like, wait, how does this stuff work? And you realize that some people just are like, they've known things that you found out maybe a month ago, they've known their whole life. And I feel like that's been a challenge of like just balancing that out because like I'm trying to grow my creative muscles, but then I'm also just trying to learn
Survive.
what or just like learn next steps, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
okay, I do this and I want to be this, and some people know, oh well, you need to do this, this, and this before you get to there, and some people, you come in early and you're like, oh, I just figured that out, but I wish I had known that 2 years ago because I could have done this, this, and this. um so I feel like that's been a little bit challenging, but not to the point like we're all saying it didn't stop any of us. We're like, we're still gonna do it, we're still going. um yeah, and just kind of finding community. I don't know if it's necessarily a challenge, but it's something that's just not instantaneous. Like, finding good peers, good mentors, people that know things that you need to know, that are really open and humble and excited to share that information with you. Yeah, that's also kind of something that it takes a while for that to get there, and that comes with support. So yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what are the things that bring you the most joy about filmmaking or being in post or the industry as a whole?
I think anytime anything makes it to screen, now knowing what I know, regardless of what the critical reception is, I'm like, that's amazing. Because we know all the moving parts that have to hit at the right point, not just in post, in production, in pre production, in development to get on the screen. I'm always just like, that's phenomenal. It's phenomenal that that stuff makes it in theaters. Like I don't
Yeah.
know if
It's
that's kind
true.
of cheesy, but it is. Um then what excites me is just like how the barriers in the short amount of time that I've been in the industry, how the barriers to entry have just come down and you get so many more people exploring. Like when I first was introduced to film, like the iPhone didn't exist. Like so you couldn't make movies on your phone. Like the fact that high schoolers can do that now, the fact that there's a free version of Resolve, so high schoolers or middle schoolers, elementary schools can mess around with software that's used in the industry now for free at a young age. I just find that really exciting because it just opens the door for more people to enter, and the more perspectives we have, the better, in my opinion. So that brings me joy seeing like young kids. I'm not big on social media, so like I don't have TikTok and stuff like that, but just the understanding the fundamentals of like they understand, or like YouTube, like kids understand editing, like something that I had to like learn through study, through books, through looking at other mediums. They can learn through just play because they have it on their phone. Like, what happens if I film it like this and then I say stop at this point and then I film that? All of that to me is like so exciting.
So it's more, I think I never thought about it. It's more organic and natural for new generations too, to be
It's
part of
like
the
taking
creative
Totally.
apart something to
field.
figure out how it works instead
Mm-hmm.
of like learning it through and there's no better way to, like, I'm not saying one way is better than the other, but like that wasn't really even an option for me as a young person to take apart video to figure out how it works. Or it was much difficult to
Mm-hmm.
execute
Yeah,
that.
no.
Right,
Not
and to
for
get
us.
even access to this kind of technology. I mean, it's still, let's say an iPhone is like $1,000, like the
Yes.
Pro, which is fairly a good amount of money. But I also think the tools make it so much easier for people to kind of focus on storytelling instead of just like how does this camera work, blah blah blah. It's
Mhm.
just like so much easier. And I also feel like the same. I feel like there's a space for phone type of content, and like, of course, cinema type of content. But to be honest, I was checking the new Olivia Rodrigo album that just came out. One of
Nice.
the new videos they shot on iPhone, and it's kind of, I don't know if it's a campaign for Apple, but they shot on iPhone. Of course, we have to say, and we know that it's all about like the production design and the lighting and blah, blah,
Lighting.
blah.
Yeah.
It's not, oh, this is an iPhone and it looks perfect. No, but it's crazy that such a high, let's say, high end product was shot on iPhone.
Yeah. Yeah. Or like I like as kids are so imaginative and creative. I mean, I'm just thinking about myself as a kid, like, like the stories, the games that you make, like playing woods or something, like playing in the woods, and it's like a whole story. Um, and if you had like access to a device where you could like film all that imaginative, like you don't know the rules of the road, like, or the traditions or patterns of like this is like most films have an act one, act two, act three. As a kid, it's just like, I have something in my mind that I want to figure out. And I feel like the more tools you have to just mess around with it, the better. Like even like filters, which I'm not, as a colorist, I'm
Yeah.
like, okay.
I have, to be honest, I have in my contracts like you cannot filter these photos because I spent
Exactly.
a lot of time colorizing these things. So no filters,
Exactly.
please.
Exactly. And it's like, okay, regardless of my feelings of like how I feel about the quality of a filter, I think it is exciting to know that people know that that's an option. Like I can manipulate the colors of the blacks in a foot. Like the fact that that's something that people are consciously aware of now is like a little exciting. Yes, it's exciting, and then it can be like, okay, but please don't put like every single one. Like even in the phone they have them, and it's like, or like even on TVs and stuff, the fact that you have the option to like boost the contrast and stuff, it means that people are understanding
how it works. Yeah, kind of
Yeah, they can't
the effect.
articulate it technically, but they understand that there's room, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
But it's like, don't turn it all the way up.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And know that there are creatives behind the scenes that fine tune this thing, you
Yeah.
know.
Oh my
But
God.
if you want to start from scratch, you know, that's exciting. Then you can, you know.
I know.
Here's the raw file.
Exactly. Now you can play, you
Yeah.
know.
Going back to that technical aspect, how have you find is, again, I'm not a colorist, of course, but how have you find, like, what's the difference, the biggest difference when you color for, let's say, the let's say, I don't know, IMAX, or for OLED TV or something. I know you remastered, you were one of the colorists that remastered
Sex and the
Sex
City.
and the City. So also, what's the process of getting some footage that has already been out there and then remastering it? Like, give us a little
Yeah.
bit of that rundown.
I think, yeah, so with remastering, I feel like, and this is true now of a lot of stuff too, is understanding where people are going to see it and how they're going to see it. And then you want to tailor your color pipeline and workflow so that they see it the best in that environment. So because it existed in 4.3 before, but we know that most I should say most American households had 16:9 TVs, and we knew that there were Super 16 scans. It's like we know that we have the material to now allow, I guess the limitation, the 4.3 sometimes, not all the times, might have been just a decision based on a limitation of the display technology. And now that the display technology is better, people can actually experience something closer to maybe what a creator may have wanted back then. Not saying that's 100% exactly how it went down with Sex and the City, but it's just like that's something that you balance. And same with the theater, and why I know a lot of people are big advocates of seeing movies in theaters. um I am too, because you have to realize that the creatives behind this movie, when they were in the color bay or in the sound bay, they were tuning it to an experience of sitting in dark, sitting with it projected. So you're experiencing it how the creatives, in like the ideal creative kind of standpoint. Not to say watching it at home is like, ugh, it's nothing compared, because that's what we take into consideration in finishing too. Is like, okay, this is like if they pay to go see the movie, bam, peak. All right, now if it's they're watching it on their TV, it needs to be fine tuned for that medium. So it's always kind of referencing the display, I feel like, and making sure that people are getting the best experience that they can have with the displays they have access to.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I think that reminds me of the recent Oppenheimer movie. They did, like, within all the marketing and like promos they were doing, they were like super specific about, like, please go see it in IMAX 70 millimeter, not
70
even like
millimeter, yep.
digital IMAX, just 70 millimeter. And I went to see it 3 times at the movies, and it was crazy. Like, I went for a subtitle one because there were some parts that we were like,
It was hard to get tickets.
yeah,
Yes.
I was like, so we went for the subtitle, like regular
Mm-hmm.
movie theater, and then we went to the 70 millimeter regular, and then the IMAX 70 millimeter. And oh my god, like the IMAX is, it's a whole experience. Every, like the face is so big, the explosion, like just seeing it like that, and you're like so immersed in the story. It's just such a, it's actually an experience, and not like, oh, I'm watching a movie, right?
Yeah.
It was,
And you get like you feel it. You like goosebumps. Like, I mean, I know
yeah.
I'm color, but advocating sound too. Like, I remember seeing Dune in theater and like sitting in the middle of the theater, like not in the back or too close or on the edges. And I just was thinking, like, I can't recreate this sonic experience at home. Like, I don't have the setup, and I'm glad that I'm hearing it here first.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, it's one of those things. But yeah, I mean, in an ideal world, everyone can see it, you know, at its finest, but there's space limitations. Like, everyone can't have Atmos set up at home. You know, you can't have the largest screen. You have to sit a certain distance from it, like, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's
Even
like,
yeah, sorry. Even talking about Oppenheimer again. Well, we're from Colombia, and we were realizing just right now that yeah, there's IMAX movie theaters back home, but there's non 70 millimeter IMAX, and we were
mhm.
like, oh my god, you
So
guys are
yeah, they will
missing
never get the
out.
chance
You won't, yeah.
to
And
have that
it's like,
experience.
ah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's like seeing, I remember seeing a show in HDR before it was available in HDR, and I'm like, oh, like, I want everyone to see it like this. And this was a show that they made a HDR, the creatives made an HDR deliverable. It's just like the distribution, it wasn't there yet. And I was just like, I know that feeling of like, oh, I want you to see it like like this. It's also, you know, like, even in you know, photography, I mess around with like 35 medium format, and it's like, okay, if I show somebody a medium format picture on my phone, they're like, "Oh, okay, that's cool." Right? But then if we take a phone picture and a medium format picture and blow it up billboard size, and then we compare them, and it's like, oh, there's the difference, you know.
Yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
even the difference from digital to film. I did film in school, but I got my film camera like a year ago. Of course, my digital, I always shoot with digital,
Hmm.
but my film is like more for my personal stuff.
Yeah.
And there's just something about it that I do feel it's more sharp, and it's just
The
beautiful.
colors.
Like the medium
Hmm.
format film is
Hmm.
just so
Oh
pretty.
my gosh, like Portrait 800,
Oh my god.
120 is like,
Yes.
with the right light is just,
Wow.
Yeah.
and I mean, I look at film stocks because I'm like, how, because it's like there's certain things about film that are limiting, but then there's certain things about film that we like, right? And it's like, it's asking yourself, like, what do we like, and like, how can we get that there? But yeah, I love that. And then just thinking about how film works, we might be going on a tangent, so please stop me
Oh
if
no,
you
this is
need to.
actually nice.
But like, I think about a phone, right? And I hope I'm not like negating everything I said before, but like, it's great that it's in your hand, but you can just take so many pictures, you know, versus like when you have a film camera, or especially a medium format camera where it's like 6x6 or 6x7, where you're limited to like 10 or 12 exposures. It
Versus the
forces you to
36.
be, yeah, it forces you to be very intentional about what you're capturing instead of just capturing. Yeah. And you realize that that's how people worked before we had the technology that we have, which is part of, I think, the allure of nostalgia, is because the process was different. You couldn't just shoot all day. Like, even when you shoot on film, like, there's just physical limitations. But yeah, I love film. It's just seeing, like, we try in color, we try and emulate the grain patterns and the textures.
Okay, so we had some technical difficulties. Yeah, there we
My
go.
end.
Okay, so with everything that here you mentioned about, working in the industry and, sometimes it could be a little bit challenging. For all our audience that are not working in the entertainment industry, I think with this episode, they are realizing that working in this industry requires a lot of energy, a lot of time, a lot of emotional support, a lot of things, right? So, do you feel you have a work-life balance? And if you do, how do you achieve it?
First of all, it's a great question because I feel like this industry, there's a lot of burnout, or there's a lot of, like you said, work personal life imbalance. Um, I will say now, yes, I do feel like I have a good work life balance. I feel like that's something that's definitely been learned. And I feel like when I was first starting out, I didn't. And I feel like it comes with knowing your, like, what I was saying before, knowing your sparks, knowing that what you like and what you do aren't intrinsically tied. Um, and Building community. I mean, like knowing you all, like knowing that there are other people that do similar to what you do, that work in the industry, and you're not alone. And on a bad day, you have someone you can talk to, and vice versa, and know that you're supported and that it's not a vacuum. It's not you against the world. We see the film credits. It's a group project, right? It's one film, but it's all these people working on it. Or it's one television series or one music video or even one cover photo, but it's all of these people that came together to make it happen. And so though that is the community of the work. And so your struggles, you should be able to, I mean, this is not necessarily 100% of the time, but the struggles that go on in creating that work, you'd hope to be able to find community in those people, to be like, oh, hey, oh, this was a tough day, or like this was a long one, glad we made it through, celebrating the victories, because we're always thinking bigger. There's always going to be a bigger show or a bigger movie that has more accolades and more awards. But going back to what I was saying, the fact that you did one thing, that's the building block. People ask, like, where can you build confidence? You remind yourself, I've done this before. I've made something before that's reached the public. So no matter what anyone says, you've done it once, right? So the hardest part is doing it once or twice and getting that baseline of like, I've done this before. And that's something you can lean on. But then, yeah, community helps, because community reminds you, it resets your value system. You can get so kind of consumed by a project, and then like just having a chill evening with friends or a coffee with friends or a colleague where you're just checking in on each other on a human nature, it's a good reset and reminder, like, this is why we're doing all of this, for human interaction, human growth, human expansion. So yeah.
Yeah, totally agree. Thank you for that. And to wrap up, do you have any tips and tricks for people that are maybe transitioning roles or maybe entering into the industry? Maybe a couple specific things that you wish you knew where you were either transitioning or maybe moving to LA and actually going into that change from being a student into actually working in the industry.
Yeah. I think one of the things I wish I knew early on was that often if you have a question, somebody else has a very similar question. Like, you're not the only one in the room that doesn't necessarily know what's going on. Even if it's jargon, like if it's just a technical word that someone throws out and you're like, and even in the moment, if you don't voice, like, maybe it's a room full of people and you don't raise your hand and it's like, hey, what does that mean, like what is a codec, but just making sure you follow up on that, because as we were talking about being able to adapt, things change, but the knowledge that you have, you get to take that wherever. And I guess that's kind of a spill into my next tidbit, is like, sometimes it's really hard to get in these, in the rooms, in the spaces that we associate with, like, oh, this is where it happens. But I used to be like a manual girl, tech manual girl. I'm like, all of these cameras have manuals. A lot of, like, Netflix puts their deliverables online, of like what they expect to receive. Resolve has a very robust manual. Abbott has a manual. I guess knowing the softwares that are used a lot and then seeing if they have a manual online, and like if you don't have someone to show you, just start soaking it up, because that's a little bit of how I learned kind of on the fly in grad school, is just reading these manuals, reading the language, seeing, you'll see things repeated over and over again. Everyone wants UHD. Maybe I need to know what UHD is. Because it might just seem insurmountable, a lot of the barrier, like, oh, I don't know this person, this person, this person, and people I know all these people. But when that opportunity comes, when you have that grounding of like, oh, well, I already know what UHD is, or like I've downloaded the free version of Resolve, which is what I use for color, and it's like I just know the UI. I might not know all the color fundamentals, but I know how to get from the edit page to the color page. You'd be surprised. That might be a little bit more than some people that know the color know. And that could be your entry point in just knowing a little bit and taking advantage of a lot of the free resources that are out there. It takes time, but then that goes back to the spark of what I was saying. When everything shuts down and you're bored, what are you doing in boredom? And if you're really into certain things, maybe in boredom, you're looking up film stocks, you're looking at photos online of covers and trying to just fine tune why your eye gravitates to certain things. Understand, oh, I tend to like warmer images, I tend to like high contrast images, just all of those things, just constantly honing. Yeah. And it shouldn't be work, right? It should be natural, because that helps with the balance too.
Yeah.
I think that's a great advice because I also think that applies to anything. Like, even if you work, like, for example, I use a lot of softwares, but I also use Word, Excel. So even if you want just to you go try to play with Word or play with Excel, you don't need to know everything and you don't need to know exactly how it works, but at least feel comfortable with the software, with the
Basics.
program, the basics.
Yeah, or like saying like in your head, like conceptually, because I mean, Lena, Maria, photographer, Lena, producer, these are big words. Like, like starting out, you're like, woo, how do we get there? And it's like, but knowing that if you want to be a producer, you need to have good people skills. You're going to be dealing with a lot of different personalities. You're going to be dealing with creatives that may be very rooted in a specific way they want to do something, but they don't understand the budget, the scope, the time, and why they can't do it like they want to do it. And you've got to be able to communicate that. You got to be able to say, hey, I see it from up here and you're right here. So I see the stuff that you're not seeing. And it's like, okay, if I want to be a producer, but I don't know how to communicate in a room, like work a room, it's like, well, honing those skills of like, I want to be a producer, but I find myself really shy. So maybe I need to get out there, just have some coffee, just get used to talking to people, get used to listening to people, get used to that kind of thing. So yeah, I feel like it's applicable kind of everywhere.
Definitely. And to be honest, we think that you're one of the most the person that we know with one of the best communication skills.
Yeah, we have to say you have an
So
amazing
nice.
Yeah.
skills.
Thank you.
You learn
Oh,
from
that's very
people all
nice.
the time.
Yeah, because
Uh,
also for people that don't know, we were the three of us in the YEP committee at the Hollywood Professional Association, and of course we've known each other I think for
Couple
3
years
years.
already.
yeah, 3 years. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's been like every single meeting and me having, English as a second language, it's like very interesting for every meeting I learn something and I'm like, oh my God, this is how people communicate.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So even if it's just a regular meeting, a producer meeting or a coffee chat with someone, like it's always really important to have your mind open and your ears open to gather that and yeah, it's to be honest, it's all about communication. We were also talking that if you have ideas, it's amazing, but if you cannot communicate it to the team, it's a waste. So
Yeah.
it's really hard. You definitely the communication skills and how you treat people and how you communicate your ideas in a nice way. It's super important in this.
Super important. Yeah, and even as my role now with Yep, I mean that's a torch that was passed from Lena. So like I know we've learned from you just like leadership skills, rallying, getting things done, keeping people excited, and then also standing up for things because sometimes you know it's not always smooth. Like you'll have some sandpapery moments, but you kind of know the ultimate end goal. And yeah, I've learned that from the both of you guys. As you can see, this is just the
Hearts all around.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's something really interesting that you mentioned. Is like stand up for the things that matter for you, and the things that we are a new generation of leaders, and we need to stand up for the things that we truly think we need to change in order to have a better future in the industry. For sure.
Yes, because growth is change. So something has to change.
That's the title of the episode now.
It's change
Yeah.
with Tahira.
Yay!
It just rolls off the tongue. Oh, where's that sound effect?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go. We're going crazy with this console.
That's so funny.
Well, I think that ends this episode really well on a very high note. Thank you so much for your time and everything you gave us today. And thanks everyone for listening, and we're excited to see you next time. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Two Amigas in Hollywood podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube, where you can find Spanish subtitled episodes. You can also check us out on TikTok and Instagram. Special thanks to Justin Potter for general tech support and translations, Paula Fajardo for cover art design, Daniel Gonzalez for the original music, as well as trailer sound design and editing, and Juliana Henao for audio consulting. See you on the next one!